Good morning, everybody. Good morning. Welcome. We're about to hear a second presentation from Phillip Bennett on Carl Jung. Let me ask everybody to take your phones, make sure they're silenced. Phillip is going to present his lecture, and then we'll have time for questions at the end. So if you have a question, you want to hold it, and then you can ask it. You might want to make a note because we're not going to interrupt him in the middle of the presentation. Okay? Turn it over to you, Phillip.
Thank you, Nancy. Just a little bit of show and tell here. If you're interested, there are several books. If you're inclined to give them a glance, the red book, which I taught on last series of classes, is the large book, which was done by Carl Jung after his break with Sigmund Freud. Fantastical images, dialogues with imaginary, visionary figures. We have on the far left, which is, if you would leave the lights on just a second, Rick, is The Art of Carl Jung, which has recently come out. All sorts of artwork, not only the red book, but his childhood drawings, castles, stone that he carved. And then there is a very new book on his wife, Emma Jung, which I haven't really read much yet, but it is her writings and her artwork. She's not as stunning an artist, but she's a fascinating writer and figure. And then, somewhat related, is the catalog for the exhibit on surrealism that was at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, which is phenomenal. And surrealists, as I'll talk about a bit, were very influenced by psychoanalysis. There is a little paperback called Boundaries of the Soul. I'll talk about that a bit by Jung Singer, an analyst. Alchemy and Mysticism. If you want a great little book, that little book right there is unbelievable. It was in the museum bookshop after the Surrealist exhibit, and it's chock-a-block with amazing imagery. It's astounding. And I'm not getting a cut on sales either. And the little black book is called Jung Speaking, and it is a collection of his interviews. He interviewed a lot with the press all over the world, and he talks about many things, including politics. It's very creepy and very prescient about the state of politics and dictators, for example. So anyway, those are just a few things that, if you're inclined, you could take a look at. The Jung Singer book has been ordered in hardback, and Nora tells me that it should be in soon in our library. Okay, here we go. Lights out. Camera. So as we looked at last week, the lineage of Carl as both scientist and mystic goes back to his father's father and beyond. There were clergy people in his family on both sides, physicians, psychiatrists, academic scholars. And his grandfather, spelled with a K, R. Carl, his parents modernized it to a C, was on the faculty of the Basel School of Medicine and was known as a very progressive guy, kind of a political radical who actually spent almost a year in jail falling afoul of the fathers. The fathers of the city of Basel was very concerned with the poor, was just a real polymath. And then his son, Johann Paulus Achilles Jung, becomes a Swiss Reformed pastor, but also was studied at Arabic studies in University of Göttingen, all sorts of, this was a very, very highly educated group of people. Carl Jung was taught Latin by 6. He was fairly fluent in Latin by 6 and picked up languages like nobody's business. His mother was, as you might tell by her face, an interesting person. Jung claimed that she had 2 personalities, one that appeared at night, which he found rather spooky and ominous, but he also felt that she had a kind of window into the mysterious. So Carl Jung himself at age 6. And just a bit about Carl Jung's theology. He was raised by his father, as I said, who was a Swiss Reformed pastor, but the father had many religious doubts and wasn't sure about the traditional doctrines of God that he had been taught. And when he and little Carl went through the catechism in preparation for Carl's confirmation, they got to the section on the Holy Trinity. And little Carl was intrigued by that, and his father said, "We're going to skip that. You know, we don't know what that is." And that was an early disillusionment of Carl towards his father. He was looking for mystery and depth. And so he had an image, a waking image, when he was about 12 of the Basel Cathedral. And it's really quite a striking image, and I'll read it to you. I'll show you what this vision was. He said, "I was 11 or 12 years old. On a splendid spring day after leaving school, I came into the cathedral square. I felt at peace and was looking forward to the fine day and saw the beauty of the cathedral, the sun glittering on its roof. The whole day was set to be happy and contented, and just then I had the feeling that I had to think something quite specific, but I did not know. And there was something else in me that would not permit the specific thought. A terrible time began for me because I always wanted to think something I did not know, and something else would not allow it. All of a sudden, I had a vision in which God shits upon the cathedral, and the turd is so enormous the roof collapses under its weight. Now I knew that this was the thought, and I was full of fear and horror that God would punish me for this blasphemous thought. But then something altogether unexpected happened. I suddenly felt completely free and cut loose, knowing that God was not angry with me, but had assimilated me into his grace. Now I knew, back. Hang on a second. Now I knew God was not angry at me, and I knew the experience was grace. I was liberated to an unbelievable extent. Of course, you might have had a similar thought with God shitting on the church. We've had that image recently, haven't we, in our political sphere? Well, to understand Jung, it's important to understand archetypes. And this is a difficult topic because archetypes are not kind of fixed things in the mind. Rather, they are motifs that arrange psychic elements into certain images characterized as archetypal. But we can only recognize the archetypes by the effects that they produce. They exist preconsciously, and presumably they form the structural dominance of the psyche in general. So I think this little video, which we may have a little difficulty getting straight onto because for some reason my YouTube Plus account is not honoring the fact that I am not supposed to get ads. Anyway, we'll see how we go.
If anyone knows security, it's me, which is why I like Google Fi Wireless, a phone plan that has...
It's the beaver archetype. Here we go. Now, shoot.
Meet Solvely, your all-in-one AI study assistant built right into your...
The one thing we refuse to admit is that we are dependent upon powers that are beyond our control. Okay. One of Carl Jung's most well-known and controversial concept is the collective unconscious.
What's up? From beginning. Let's see. Wait, you want to check it out, Ed? There we go. Oh, so here's hoping.
I've always loved exploring someplace new, which is why I like Google Fi Wireless. They've got more high-speed...
It's worth waiting for, folks.
...data and 200-plus international destinations.
We'll just have to wait this one out.
US carrier at no extra cost. So I can see... the world without getting my feathers ruffled. Google Fi Wireless. Switch today.
What you're going to see is an introduction to archetypes.
Business intelligence.
Yeah. I know exactly. Yeah, it's not working properly. Well, it'll come up. There's something wrong with the video feed. Okay, here we go.
Is that we are dependent upon powers that are beyond our control. One of Carl Jung's most well-known and controversial concept is the collective unconscious, the aspect of the unconscious mind which manifests inherited, universal themes which run through all human life. As is described in his autobiography, Memories, Dreams, Reflections, Jung experienced exceedingly vivid dreams throughout his life. The first one starting at the age of 3, where he encountered the so-called man-eater, a giant cyclops sitting on a golden throne with a single eye gazing upwards, symbolizing a ritual phallus. Jung would think of this subterranean god, not to be named, as the underground counterpart and dark side of Lord Jesus, a frightful revelation which had been accorded to him without him seeking it. This haunted him for years, and was his initiation into the realm of darkness. There is no light without shadow, and no psychic wholeness without imperfection. As is characteristic of Jung's life, he stumbled upon the idea of the collective unconscious after a dream. In the dream, Jung found himself in the upper floor of a house which he did not know, but which seemed to be his house. The salon was surrounded by fine old furniture and paintings. He descended the stairs to the ground floor, and everything was much older, with medieval furnishing. Here he came upon a heavy door and opened it.
Your biggest fear
Sorry.
came true.
Let's go on. We'll come back. I may see if I can re-embed that and use that later. There's something wrong with the video. In essence, archetypes are not just mental contents, they're instinctual, they're rooted in the body. And here, if we look at Leonardo da Vinci, you can get a feel for how the circle or the square, these various motifs are really part of our embodied existence. Archetypal themes can include age, the 7 ages of man, all the world is a stage, Shakespeare. They can also include aspects of various particular stages of life, the puer or puella aeterna, the eternal youth. We can see the more positive valence here on the left, the pre-Raphaelite portrait, and then the Peter Pan on the other side, which is we need enough youth to be able to have vitality no matter what our age, but we also need to be able to be grounded. And you've probably met people like this who are eternally young, but they've never somehow been able to get themselves grounded in life. And for Jung, the idea is that you need a mix of these things. And for us, as we get older, these kind of archetypal motifs are often two-sided, as it were. We have here on the one side, we have grandmother. This is the wise, kind woman, probably like most of the women in this room who have children or grandchildren, who is a source of connection, reliability, right? Child sitting, being able to be there as an anchor in the family. And then the wise crone is often this image, sometimes very negative, I think, in our culture of the woman as the witch, but the woman is mysterious. And these things can be a mixed bag. In other words, having enough wisdom, but also having enough life to us. On the male counterpart, we have the Senex, who is the wise old man, the person of experience. And he too represents generativity, he represents wisdom. And also the Senex is, what can we say? He's the wizard, but he could also be the crotchety guy that's complaining about the food at the fireside cafe, right? How to be able to have enough Senex so that we're grounded in our lives, but also not so much that we're crotchety. And this, I think, is one of the challenges for us as we age. Some of this we know can be neurological. Our brains are shrinking. The hemispheres aren't talking to each other the way they used to. But so you can see these are archetypal themes, and they occur throughout stories, don't they? I mean, the ring cycle of Tolkien, fairy tales, it goes on and on, Hansel and Gretel. These are hard to read, but these are archetypal characters that we'll find in literature, mythology, and our daily life. The nurturer, the magician, the lover, the jester, the innocent, the explorer, the outlaw, the creator, the sage, the ruler, the hero, the regular guy. Now, these are not, absolute airtight compartments, but we see these in the movies constantly, don't we? We see these in literature. They're kinds of motifs. Animal archetypes are everywhere. Richard the Lion-Hearted, the heart of a lion. I mean, this is very powerful. Somebody was telling me recently about it was my aunt who was visiting, about their encounters with a lion on safari. Not quite directly, but just close enough to really strike some terror and great respect in her heart. The owl. This is a favorite symbol of mine. The owl is probably one of the most perceptive animals in the world. It's able to sense any movement of air. Its wings, its feathers are highly sensitive. It has very acute hearing. It sees well in the dark. And so it's representative of wisdom, perceptivity. I used to have a lot of owl dreams, and sometimes when Jungian analysts are working with a patient, they look particularly for dream sequences. How do things reappear, and do they change? Would the owl change over time? And I think the most powerful owl dream I had toward the end of a sequence was something flying up out of the toilet. And it wasn't visible. It was some force that was coming up, and it brushed my face with its wing as it blew by. And I knew in my own mind's eye that this was an owl. Now, of course, we had a lot of fun with that because the stuff, right, the refuse, the shit in our lives, in this case, the owl came up. So these animal archetypes are very powerful. The snake, this is endless, isn't it? The book of Genesis, but most ancient creation myths have some snake. The snake is both a symbol of healing, and it can also be poisonous. It's a symbol of eternity. This is just an endless symbol. And then a dog who puts his nose in your slippers. I don't know quite what this means, but apparently it's something archetypal there. Dragons, right? Dragons are archetypal. We see them everywhere in mythology. And then your grandkids' versions of dragons, right? These have just captivated the imagination. They're now in our collective psyche. And horrible figures, sometimes represented in action figures, comics, the things that we sometimes find in our own dreams or our collective life. This is from the exhibit at the Philadelphia Museum of Art, looking into the interiority of the psyche, archetypal figures, I believe, connected to the tarot deck. Heroes, Luke Skywalker. This is a constant motif throughout human history. Beowulf, I mean, you could go on and on and on. Odysseus, the Jedis, etc. And then we have the Antichrist archetype. And this is funny on the one hand, but Jung did quite a bit on the Antichrist archetype. And he believed this was particularly during the time when World War I was underway. He had visions of World War I occurring, of blood covering the northern hemisphere. And he believed that the archetype of the Antichrist was the one who presented him or herself as savior and had a kind of compelling magical quality. And I think this is one of the most chilling quotes of Jung. Man is the source of all coming evil. So to put a finer point on then this appears in the dictator archetype. And he said that excuse me, he said this: "There is no question that Hitler belongs to the category of the truly mystic medicine man. This markedly mystic characteristic of Hitler's is what makes him do things which seem to us illogical, inexplicable, and unreasonable." And this is from Diagnosing the Dictators. Jung was in the physical presence of Hitler, Stalin, and Mussolini. I don't know quite the context, but he saw each of them in person. I'm not sure he met them personally. And he described Hitler as being utterly taken over by his embodiment of the German people, and that he was almost a mask for the collective psyche of the German people. Affect also involves emotion. We are hardwired for affect. And Sylvan Tompkins, who did research at Penn on affect theory, working with infants, observation of infants, came up with what he called some basic affects. And I don't know whether you can you read them enough? Okay, let me read them to you. So one of them is enjoyment, play. This is when the baby or the adult shows a sign of being able to engage, to play. The next one is interest or excitement. We see this all the time. And we see this in animals as well, most of them. Surprise and startle. This is a very important response. We can be surprised by something, but it also serves a kind of survival instinct, right? We're startled, we're caught off guard. Anger and rage. Anger can be a normal, important emotion for self-protection, and we all know too how it can take us over. It can absolutely create a firestorm. Disgust. It's its own kind of affect. The baby curls up its nose or spits something out. We all have this experience, whether it's with some physical intake or it's the disgust we might feel towards the news, towards human behavior. Dismell is just what it says it is. It doesn't smell good. Distress and anguish. The baby expresses her needs by physical distress, by crying. Fear and terror. These are hardwired emotions as well. Fear is a normal kind of affect. With too much trauma, it can then develop a kind of critical terror or a hypervigilance. And the last one is shame or humiliation. And for Tompkins, shame was not necessarily feeling guilty. It was more the painful experience of being looked at or looked into in a way where one felt exposed and did not feel affirmed. So shame, humiliation. So all of these things are operative in some way when we get into these archetypal motifs. Geometrical archetypes are everywhere. I was thinking of this when there was a full moon not so long ago and thinking, so the archetype of the circle, we see this in the moon, don't we? And all of our ancestors have looked up and seen this globe in the sky. We see it when we drop a rock into water. In some ways, looking into the human eye, there's a circularity. And of course, the circles of the planet. And the astounding accuracy that our ancestors often achieved in terms of astronomy, Stonehenge, Mayan ruins, it goes on and on and on. Their ability to understand a great deal about the universe, and some of which has been corroborated by our current science, some of it not so much so. These calendric ways of looking at the stars, looking at time. And you know, this is an Aztec calendar, but the Mayans have them too. And when I was on a field trip with St. Martin's from Chestnut Hill, we went to Chichicastenango up in the Mayan highlands. And there the Mayans took over the Roman Catholic churches centuries ago. And they still have the Catholic saints, but they understand them to be Mayan deities. And all day and all night, someone stands outside the church of San Tomas with a coffee can on wires, swinging an incense, thurible, with copal incense. And every day they consult the Mayan calendar to see what's auspicious, to see what would be bad luck. and you don't take photographs of them. And I stupidly did that, and the guy saw me. Fortunately, I wasn't killed, because there are people who've actually been stoned to death or killed for doing that. But so these are ancient archetypal motifs. There we go. Shiva, who is the lord of the dance, and Shiva has an interesting kind of dual function here. He is, on the one hand, on his left, the left you see is a drum. He's beating, the creation is coming into being through the beating of the drum, and on his other hand is fire. And Shiva creates these cycles of time, which are billions of years old. Shiva creates and Shiva destroys, and then recreates again through this circular dance. This is, I don't know whether you know this, this is Indra's net. We take a look at that for a second and imagine that this is the entire cosmos, and it is an entire net spreading to infinity, and at each nexus, each corner where the ropes or strands meet, there is a jewel, and each jewel is reflecting every other jewel in the net. And concepts here from Hinduism and then carried into Buddhism are sunyata, which is emptiness, and I won't say this word, it's dependent or origination, which in essence means that nothing exists by itself, that everything is interwoven, and then perfect interpenetration. So we now see in quantum physics the same image of the universe. Everything is woven together. This net hung over the god Indra's palace at the axis of the Mundi, the center of the world. Ptolemy and his system of understanding the universe, beautiful circles. Alchemy, which would be a whole course in itself. Not only the attention to metallurgy or creating dyes or chemicals, but also trying to understand both the outer world and also the mystery of inner transformation, the zodiac. This is from the Surrealist exhibit at the museum. The Surrealists were influenced by psychoanalysis and the fact that things could come up from the unconscious unbidden, very similar to some of the spiritualism that we looked at last week. What is this? I can't tell you, I forget the title, but these are examples of things that are coming up from the psyche with archetypal imagery. This is Remedios Vara, who does a lot of stuff with alchemical imagery. She was a Spaniard who moved to Mexico City. This is Lenora Carringham, who was her good friend, also moved to Mexico City. Look at the little gremlin at the bottom. Remedio Varas again, alchemy. These are supposed to be Jungian symbols in some way. Now, when we look at archetypal imagery in terms of geometry, the whole idea of the celestial hierarchies is quite interesting. The idea that heaven is full of rings of different kinds of spiritual beings. And a fellow named Pseudo-Dionysius the Areopagite, that's a mouthful, isn't it? I'm not sure, well, he was confused with another Dennis. Imagine if your mom said, well, you're not the real Dennis, you know, you're the Pseudo-Dionysius, was a Neoplatonic mystic and philosopher. His idea was that there were all of these different realms of angels. And I'm just curious, for those of you raised in a Roman Catholic background, did you get any teaching about the kinds of angels? They were seraphim, cherubim, You always had your own personal guardian angel, but they were rings of spiritual beings, and they were all connected in some way to the Holy Trinity. The title of this is interesting. It's a compilation of artificial memory. I'm not quite sure what that means. But look at the conical design and look at this conical design. So here we are someplace out at the far right, 13.8 billion years ago, give or take, with the Big Bang. June Singer, whose book we will have in the library, was my first analyst. June Singer and her husband, Richard, who was a rabbi, were early students in Zurich. And her book, The Boundaries of the Soul, I would recommend if you want an introduction to Jung, particularly in terms of what would happen in a Jungian psychoanalytic experience. But she talks about this business of alignment. When things are not working for us, instead of fighting and struggling, we need to say, what's happening here? How am I not being true to who I am? What is pulling me away from my purpose? We're going to delve further next week into the relationship between Carl Jung and Wolfgang Pauli, who was a Nobel physicist. Just a little bit of a preview here, and I think this is going to work. Let's hope, synchronistically.
If research could only advance far enough, we should arrive at an ultimate agreement between physical and psychological concepts. Take a moment to imagine the historic conversation between the brilliant psychoanalyst Carl Jung and the Nobel laureate physicist Wolfgang Pauli. It was out of the meeting of these two giants at the intersection of the realms of psychology and quantum physics that a revolutionary, paradigm-shifting collaboration emerged, the Jung-Pauli conjecture. In this intellectual fusion, Jung and Pauli finally bridged the plane of the psyche with the very bottom plane of the physical world, the quantum realm. Part 1. The Meeting of Minds. In the late 1920s, Carl Jung, the pioneering Swiss psychiatrist, coined the term synchronicity to refer to the meaningful coincidences that seem to transcend conventional causality and suggest a profound interconnection between the internal realms of the psyche and the external workings of the world. If you are interested in a deep dive into Jung's synchronicity, click on the link in the upper right corner to watch our full video on the subject.
And we won't do that.
In essence, Jung's exploration of this concept aimed to unveil a deeper order in reality, in which seemingly unrelated events share a meaningful relationship beyond chance. He explained it as such: synchronicity could be understood as an ordering system by means of which similar things coincide, without there being any apparent cause. Parallel to Jung's inquiries, the eminent physicist Wolfgang Pauli was delving into the mysteries of quantum physics. Pauli's groundbreaking exclusion principle, established in 1925, revealed the inherent behavior of subatomic particles, shaping the foundations of modern physics. But how did Pauli and Jung ever come to cross paths? Pauli, by the end of 1930, had reached the pinnacle of his scientific achievements. Yet, his personal life was in disarray, marked by emotional turbulence, triggered by family tragedies and a failed marriage. As he grappled with these challenges, Pauli turned to heavy drinking and smoking, seeking solace in the dimly lit ambiance of Mary's Old-Timers Bar in Zurich. As his personal life reached a breaking point, his father intervened to recommend therapy with Carl Jung. The convergence of their minds was remarkable. Pauli's dreams, often laden with geometric elements and abstract symbols, were interpreted by Jung in the light of archetypes. This interchange led to a weaving of connections between the realms of mathematical physics and ancient symbolism. The culmination of their collaboration resulted in the joint volume, The Interpretation of Nature and the Psyche, in 1952. This publication featured Jung's treatise on synchronicity and Pauli's exploration of the influence of archetypal ideas on scientific thought. Part 2: Synchronicity and the Quantum. Chance, Probability, and the Observer. Pauli's insights into quantum physics offered Jung a meticulous understanding of the foundational principles that govern the subatomic realm. This infusion of scientific knowledge transformed Jung's exploration of synchronicity. The quantum landscape is defined by what seems to be an inherent randomness and unpredictability, challenging traditional notions of determinism and causality. Under Pauli's influence, Jung's perception of synchronicity thus evolved beyond a mere alignment of random events into a manifestation of a nuanced and subtle order, one that resonated with the intricate probabilities woven into the fabric of quantum mechanics. The dance of probability in the quantum realm, where particles exist in superposition and uncertainties reign, became a metaphorical stage for Jung's evolving concept of synchronicity. Pauli's discussions on the probabilistic nature of quantum phenomena spurred Jung to ponder how the inherent uncertainty and ambiguity in the quantum world might find parallels in the subjective experiences of individuals. The probability waves in quantum mechanics resonated with the idea that meaningful connections, as observed in synchronicity, could emerge from a realm of potentiality and indeterminacy. In the quantum realm, particles can become entangled, where the state of one particle instantaneously influences the state of another, regardless of the distance between them. This phenomenon challenges our classical understanding of locality and suggests a profound interconnectedness that transcends physical space. Indeed, in quantum physics, the observer plays the crucial role of collapsing the quantum wave function, which is analogous to the role of consciousness in shaping meaningful coincidences in the macroscopic world. This intertwining of quantum probability and the observer's influence opens up profound philosophical questions about the nature of reality and the interconnected dance between chance and conscious observation. Pauli's contributions illuminated the observer effect, revealing the profound notion that the act of observation itself could shape the outcomes of quantum experiments. He thus wrote in 1954, "In the new pattern of thought, we do not assume any longer the detached observer, but an observer who by his indeterminable effects creates a new situation, theoretically described as a new state of the observed system." This revelation steered Jung toward perceiving the observer's consciousness as a pivotal force in shaping meaningful connections between events. This concept blurred the conventional boundaries between subjectivity and objectivity, opening up new vistas for understanding the interplay between perception and the unfolding of synchronistic events. In essence, Pauli's profound grasp of quantum principles provided Jung with a robust scientific foundation to substantiate and expand his theories on synchronicity. Their collaborative endeavors unveiled profound interconnections between the ostensibly distinct domains of physics and psychology. As they navigated the intricate nuances of chance, probability, and observation, their symbiotic relationship flourished, one that not only enriched the comprehension of synchronicity, but also constructed a bridge between the enigmatic nature of the quantum world and the mysteries embedded within the human psyche. Pauli's involvement became a catalyst for a holistic exploration, transcending disciplinary boundaries and inviting a profound contemplation of the underlying unity between the microcosm and the macrocosm. Part 3: Jung's Unus Mundus, binding the mental and the physical. This profound realization of the interconnectedness of mind and matter prompted Jung to propose the concept of the Unus Mundus, This idea will be absolutely fundamental to understand the culmination of Jung and Pauli's collaboration in the Jung-Pauli conjecture. In his 1955 book, Mysterium Conjunctionis, Jung explains the unus mundus as such. The idea of the unus mundus is founded on the assumption that the multiplicity of the empirical world rests on an underlying unity, and that not two or more fundamentally different worlds exist side by side or are mingled with one another. Rather, everything divided and different belongs to one and the same world. With the unus mundus, or one world, Jung tried to say that the universe as a whole is unified. It is one whole. The universe is neither mental nor physical, but psychophysically neutral. But this undivided whole is composed of the two aspects of the mental and the physical. This idea is sometimes referred to as dual aspect monism. In this conceptualization, there exists a unified, interconnected realm that transcends the apparent duality of mind and matter. This notion implies that the mental and material aspects are interconnected and inseparable. Pauli was in profound agreement with this picture of the universe. In 1948, he wrote, "The laws of this world would then be the physical manifestations of the archetypes. Each law of nature should then have an inner correspondence and vice versa." But within the scheme of unus mundus, the breakdown of the primordial symmetry leads to the emergence of dual aspects. This implies that the unity inherent in unus mundus experiences a shift or breakdown, resulting in the manifestation of dualities such as mind and matter. The process of symmetry breakdown contributes to the diversity and multiplicity observed in the manifest world and the quantum realm. Part 4, the Jung-Pauli conjecture.
I'm going to stop this here.
Pauli-Jung,
and we'll pick up
if research
next time. You can turn the lights on if you like. One of the things that I have done is try to consult with a physicist friend who is a professor at Drexel, because I read bits of science, right? If Neville were here, who knows what he would say? But a lot of this stuff, you know, is still speculative. There are various different models being used. But I think, Joel, you asked the question last time, is in the light of modern science, is a lot of this thought about synchronicity out of date, or has it been debunked? Interestingly, a lot of what's happening now in physics is this exploration of dual aspect monism that they referred to, which is the idea, and it's rather mind-blowing, that everything is in fact one, the unus mundus, and that matter and psyche kind of fall away, as it were, that it's hard to even conceptualize this, but that the idea of synchronicity would come from the fact that things are already united, but they get seemingly separated. And then when I see my friend I haven't seen in years, or your friend who walked out her front door, experiences I'm sure many of you have had where you think, what are the chances? The idea here would be that, oh no, actually these things are related, right? Or I think, if I may, Chava, you were talking about people you know who, 3 people had an image of or thought about a departed friend almost simultaneously. Was that around her death or at the time of her death?
Not long after.
Right. So there's an example of something that's coming up. So anyway, it's a complicated kind of view of things, but I think it's intriguing because it provides some way to approach the, quote, spiritual in a way where we can do this with some continued emphasis upon what can be empirically proven. Now, empiricism, that's a big word, isn't it? But I think that it gives us at least some glimpses into a different way of seeing the world, which echo in many ways the mysticism of previous generations, but they've opened it up in a scientific way. So thoughts, questions?
Yes, I'm so impressed that Jung and Polly are Westerners, and Jung comes from a Christian tradition, but yet their theory seems to me to be much more akin to Eastern religion and Eastern philosophy.
That's true. Jung also thought, though, that Westerners should live within the Christian or the Judeo-Christian myth. But definitely a lot of these concepts seem, definitely. You can find them in Western mysticism as well, but right, they have for us a flair of Eastern thought, right? The fact that everything is connected. Sometimes people who come from an Eastern background are not surprised by synchronicity at all. They just presume that's the way things are. It's causality that's more difficult for them, the idea of logical causality, right? Yeah.
Now, in what way is synchronicity useful in psychotherapy?
I'm going to show a video next week of another analyst of mine, Beverly Zabriskie, who's going to describe a series of blackbirds that began appearing in her patients' dreams around the time of 9/11, and then showing that children were drawing pictures of blackbirds, and that blackbirds began to appear in all sorts of configurations. And then when the trade towers came down, birds also died in this process. Is that helpful? I don't know. I mean, she claims that she's able to use this intuition sometimes when she's helping people. I think she did it with me. I think it is possible to know things that don't seem rationally possible to know. Yeah.
I have a question. Did Jung have did he study Druidism? Celtic Druidism, do you know?
Oh, Druidism. I don't know. I bet he did. He studied so much.
There seems to be a lot of connections here, which I'll try to mystify us with next week. Yeah.
I thought of this when we are looking at circles, and I was thinking of the Celts and what is the name of it again? The triiscula. Mm-hmm.
A couple of thoughts. One is that I have a friend who is a writer and has a number of paranormal experiences, but she went to that place in Mexico that you mentioned where you're not allowed to take photographs.
Mm-hmm.
And she asked an elder there, "May I take photographs?" And he said, "Sure, take all you want."
Mm-hmm.
And all of them were blank when she got them developed. And she was so excited, she took pictures of this, of that, and the rest of the pictures on her trip, I think, came out okay. Anyway, the other thing is, it seems to me there is, perhaps another way to think about the unity of the unus mundus, and this is sort of more, I don't know, well, whatever. It doesn't rely on archetypes, but it seems to me that if we think of ourselves as physical beings, that is, our thoughts, our feelings, our dreams come from our brains. And our brains may have similar structures to, other animals or whatever, that, of course, it's all one world because our brains are physical.
Mm-hmm.
And so we are, of course, embedded in the world of physics, whatever we may think about, whatever we know or not know about quantum physics. I have a nephew who's doing his dissertation on quantum computing, and I wonder if he thinks about any of this stuff. I'm going to ask him. But back to the archetypes for a minute. I guess they have always struck me as, in some sense, deeply sexist. and that they, and I am no real student of the archetypes, but that there is a way in which the feminine archetypes seem less autonomous, less less powerful in some ways. I mean, they're powerful, but they're not necessarily. Anyway, that's just one of my uncomfortable feelings about this.
And a lot has been done on that. Polly Young-Eisendrath, the supervisor of mine, has written a lot on this. The anima stuff, the contrasexual, she's saying, what happens with gay people? Or, do you have an inner man, inner woman? Yeah, a lot of these things need updating, for sure, definitely. But the idea of everything being interpenetrated, we know now that there is this elaborate fungal network right here, Cathedral Village, and the trees are talking to each other. We know that there's some rudimentary kind of awareness of plants and the animal world. So I think thinking of these motifs more in an embodied way and not so much a platonic way where they just they're there in heaven and then they get embodied, I have a question for everybody, just a show of hands. When you look at this business about synchronicity, meaningful coincidence, the what are the chances kind of thing, how many people have experienced that in their lives? Okay, so a good number, right? A good number. Is it something that you felt you could share with somebody else? Did you like sharing it? Did you feel you might be thought crazy if you shared it? I'm just curious.
It would have to have some sort of a judgment attached to it, because there are some people that you'll say, I just saw Aunt Bertha who died 10 years ago, and they'll say, well, she didn't die, or they think you're crazy.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
When I was a young woman and just finished college, and I had a boyfriend who was going away to college, and we agreed we wouldn't continue our relationship because we were poor, we couldn't visit and stuff. So we went our separate ways. And the summer after he graduated from the same college that I went to, I had an accident at 11:30 at night in Denver. His name is Donald. He woke up in Woods Hole, Massachusetts at this precise time that I had this accident. He was living in student housing, and it was half a mile to downtown Woods Hole where he could make a phone call. He got up, walked down, and called me. Of course, we didn't have cell phones. And the other roommates I was living with said they didn't know where I was. I was supposed to have been home, but I wasn't. Well, this confirmed to us that we were intended to be together. And we got married later and had 2 beautiful children. And it's always been such a mystery. Donald is a geophysicist. He's a scientist. This isn't part of how he sees the world. So that's a mystery.
It is a mystery indeed.
And true synchronicity, I mean.
Absolutely. Just a personal note myself, that I've been drawn back to Jung. I began reading him in college because he's often not read in mental health classes. He's considered persona non grata, and you can see why, right? He's far-ranging, and he pulls in all sorts of mystical thought, anthropology. But I've come back to him, and maybe a little bit like Jung, who had a pastor father and being raised in a traditional Christian background. A, I'm afraid of dying. B, I'm surrounded by diminishment all the time now in my community. C, I'm wondering about this God that I was taught to believe in. And is there, in fact, something bigger that I can make meaning out of in my life? And I think it's got a personal valence for me as well. And D, and Susan and I have talked about this, I don't want to believe something because I think it's comforting. I can't convince myself of that, right? And so when we look at these different models, we don't know for sure, right? But we're getting glimpses here. We're getting glimpses of some things that are actually physical, as Chava was saying, some things that we do know now about quantum physics that are utterly mind-blowing. If you have two particles that are spinning, they're connected even though they have light years between them. What in the hell is that all about? This ability to never be able to completely locate something, indeterminacy. So we do know those things, right? And they exist, even though the models are being tweaked. The latest I heard from physicist friends is that this model of the Big Bang still stands, right? This is the book of Genesis, as it were. It still stands. Our brains are amazing. Consciousness, and this speaks to the issue. If consciousness is embodied, and consciousness can transcend space and time, or move across space and time, as Doris was saying, what does this say about our world and our existence? I think it's exciting stuff. And it's also, I would say, it has a moral implication to it. And I was thinking of Peter, your course on 1984. I think Jung was quite clear that the human being was the main source of all coming danger. So the emphasis here is not just on navel gazing or finding something esoteric. It's trying to understand how we are all connected, and that we have an evolutionary trajectory. This is something we haven't mentioned, and I know Charlie's been very involved in this too, with Teilhard de Chardin and others. We are on an evolutionary trajectory, and it's not clear whether we're going to survive, right? If we're going to crash planet Earth, and whether there'll be little to nothing left for any future generations. Or will our creativity come into play in ways that will be surprisingly positive? I mean, we are living in a different world now when you think of it. And think about maybe your grandparents, my grandparents, great-grandparents. Think of all of the inventions that occurred from the Industrial Revolution. It's absolutely stunning. And this stuff is not just theoretical. This is how our GPS works constantly. That the speed of time is a little faster as you get farther away from the Earth because of gravity and the curve of space-time. And so all of these satellites are checking out with each other to show, well, you're 5 minutes away from McDonald's. You're not here, you're not there. So this stuff, as somebody was saying too with their relative doing computing, this stuff is we're living in it. So yes, we have a...
There was someone here. Can we?
Phil?
Ken first, and then you.
Phil?
Yeah.
You touched on the archetype of was the magic man of Hitler.
Mm-hmm.
Wasn't Jung more involved with Hitler and the Nazi Aryan nationalism in support of it for a bit?
No.
Did he apologize?
That's a very complicated issue. Basically, in essence, what happened was he was the president of a psychoanalytic group. And one of the analysts was a cousin of Goebbels, who was in Hitler's cabinet. Hitler did not, he did not support, did not support Nazism, was highly critical of it, and saw its dangers. What he did talk about sometimes is race psychology. And he said, he looked at cultures, and, we could probably admit this ourselves, right? That there are certain, we joke sometimes about uptight WASPs or hysterical Mediterraneans, et cetera. And so he used some of that. And sometimes I think he did it in a rather naive and patronizing way when he got to quote primitives, some of his travels through Africa. He would use these very Eurocentric and very male, as Chava was saying, images. So from that standpoint, he was very much a person of his generation. But no, many of his closest associates were Jews. He was very involved in trying to support them and protect them. I mean, he was very close with Freud, you know. So I think that that's a kind of misconception. It's not that he is completely free of prejudice, but there were prejudices that had a kind of coherence to them, right? This is one of the problems with AI, as you noticed. You get on YouTube, and you get a whole raft of stuff, right? You get, I've tried to test this out, and I send it to my friend Frank at Drexel. You know, is there anything bogus here or completely off the wall? But then you get other AI things that say things like, Jung supported the Nazis. He did this and he did that, and later he apologized, none of which is true, right? And it's done in a voice that's Carl Jung's AI voice. So I think, you know, viewer beware. So maybe, do we have time for one more? Just one more.
Well, this is just something reminded, something I read a long time ago in Synchronicity. There are two twins who have been separated from birth. There have been two twins who had been separated from birth. And as adults, one of them one day was getting tremendous chest pain. And I think went to the hospital, whatever, but getting this tremendous chest pain. At the same time, the other twin, who had been working in a mine, was in a collapsed mine, and he was being crushed.
Yeah.
And it was just at the same time.
There are all sorts of coincidences. For example, what I discovered is that William James and Henry James were actually switched at birth. When we finished the class last week, I came, this is true, I opened up my cell phone, and the first thing was an ad from the William James College, the psychology department. I didn't know there was such a thing, so take that for what you will. Thank you. Thank you.